by Maurits. At some stage in the presentation, Monique will take over, and then there will be, as usual, there will be opportunity for questions and answers. So we have a pretty long session. Not sure if we'll actually manage to complete it in 1.5 hours, but we'll see. So without further ado, let me give Maurits the floor to start the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Govert. Yes, I'm going to tell you something about how to finance an innovation hub. I am using the term innovation hub instead of digital innovation hub because this project is, if I can go to the next slide. We've got a little bit of tech, yeah. So this presentation is the result of a cooperation between two European Union funded projects, the so-called EU GREAT project as well as the Access to I4MS project. The EU GREAT project has been assigned by DG RTD, which focused on the assessment of so-called large-scale research and innovation infrastructures. We looked at the financing of those beasts, those animals, and on the other hand, of course, the Access to I4MS project. So that's why we call them innovation hubs here, but you can just think of it as digital innovation hubs. So what are the objectives of this presentation? It is to provide you with an overview of the possibilities, the pros and cons, the non-possibilities of finding sources for your innovation hubs, and to create a kind of a mindset that allows you to understand better your customers, so the people that will make use of the innovation hubs and the financing issues there, as well as the mindset of possible finances for your innovation hubs. And why? Because we think that this mindset will allow you to better approach them and better talk with those people, of course. That's important. It also will help you to get a little bit more pragmatic and realistic overview of what you can expect from your customers and how you could organize your services. So that's the objectives and why we are giving this presentation. So just a quick introduction. If you look at the financing of a hub, there are three elements which are important. The income that's provided by your customers, the costs which you need to pay your staff, your equipment, buying your infrastructure and housing, renting, etc., and also the raw materials you use. And on the other hand, the filling the gap between the income and costs, which is very often the case, and that's about the funding sources that you can use to fill that gap and to make the balance even, so to say. I will be talking about the funding sources a lot. That's my objective. On the other hand, Monique will focus on the customers to provide you the mindset of the customers. We will not address in this presentation the resources just simply because there's no time. That we have the previous webinar was about business plan, and the business plan, there's a lot being said about resources also there already, so you can use that information provided to give a good view on the resources. So again, this picture, I think some of you will have seen this. This is the evolution of the digital innovation or the innovation hub. So first there's a preparation, that's getting the plans out, preparing the business plan. That's what you all are doing right now, the preparing of the startup. Then there's the phase of initiation, phase of stabilization, continuous growth, and of course the ending, the termination of the project, but that can be in 20 years, so to say. I can tell you that within those different phases, the financing is totally different. So we'll talk about that a little bit, also to get you some insight in how that's developing and the different perspectives of how you can see this evolution. Then a second slide is about the actual financing of an innovation hub. We distinguish four stages, four elements there. The preparatory, that's what you also saw in the previous slide. So it's startup funding to develop the business plan. Then there's an element which focuses on infrastructure, so equipment, housing, and that kind of stuff needs to be paid, but that's initially it needs to be there because you want to start with the work quite soon. Then there's the financing of projects that use the infrastructure and it's very much connected to the clients. And then there's operational cost of, for example, the staff, the indirect costs, so to say, if you look at the Horizon 2020 terminology. The hub will make money because they offer services, and this is an overview of services that can be provided by a digital innovation hub. So the first is the community building. It's scoutage, brokerage. It's creating the ecosystem and creating the connection between different stakeholders, partners, vendors, SMEs in the ecosystem that is relevant, of course, to your innovation hub. The second one is on collaborative R&D. This is about the TRL 2 to 4, 5 technology development. Sometimes this kind of service is not being provided by an innovation hub, but we see a lot of innovation hubs also doing these kind of things. This is, of course, part of the competence center, which is again part of the innovation hub. Then there's a third element, skills and education. It's teaching, training your customers how the technologies can work out, how the business development can work out. Fourth element, incubator accelerator support. This is about getting startups or new business lines with your customers on track. Visioning and strategy development is a little bit more meta level. So there's the market intelligence, the innovation and strategy development for your ecosystem. Testing and validation is about a customer coming to you asking if you can provide them with a certification, to provide them with a kind of branding that his product is okay. The technological support on scale up is about helping them to incorporate the technologies, the innovations from a technical point of view in their business. And this is, of course, about testing the technologies and and fine-tuning it towards a viable product. But it also is about small series production in order to allow your customers to go to their clients, to their customers again, to show, look, I've got this product. Commercial infrastructure, you've got a lot of technologies there, and with regard to the competence center, and it's just offering the technologies as infrastructure for third parties to be used. So this can be done for just R&D purposes, and it can also be done because of low rate commercial production. Access to finance is connecting your clients with your customers with potential funding sources. And the last element, the last service is the mentoring. This is about you playing a role in mentoring other hubs and other competence centers, how they could organize their services and how they can link up to the broader pan-European network, etc., etc. So these are the services you can provide and the services that will allow you to make money, so to say. This slide, also again an introduction slide, is about, there's a lot of talk about public and private innovation hubs. And I included this slide to just make you aware that this can be two different perspectives, different types of innovation hubs. So where the public innovation hubs are much more societal oriented, they've got a societal mission, and that connects to the funding mechanisms from government. The private innovation hubs are about making business and making money. So there's a lot of commercial services on the private ones and a broader mission on the public one. So it's a spider in a web of creating the ecosystem. You want to have the expensive technological infrastructure being used by SMEs, etc., etc. It is very much about SMEs. And it's a semi-open partnership where the private is a semi-closed partnership. Seems not that much of a difference, but there is. So the semi-open is, the principle is that other partners can join up with the Innovation Hub, where the private one is, there's an established partnership, and if needed, some partners can also be part of the private Innovation Hub, but that's not the objective. So now I go to the part one of the financing of the Innovation Hub. What I earlier mentioned with the 4 types of financing needed for an Innovation Hub, this is the first one. This is about startup financing. It's doing the feasibility study, creating consortium, developing business plan, finding finance. What we can see here in our experience is that it's more or less 2 stages, kind of a white paper in the first stage and the development of the business plan in the other one. The money available for these kind of activities is very limited. It is a lot of hard work from the partners, which are created in the first bump, so to say, that are in kind working on this proposal. I think we are very lucky that the Commission has set up the mentoring program to support these kind of elements, but this stage. But I can, I'm sure you all see that the 50,000 available for this work is very limited, and there's a lot more money that is needed to really set up the business plan and to create a viable entity. So this can be up to millions, but let's say 200,000 euros is not a bad figure that you need for this, and there's very limited public and private money. By the way, we see that a lot of governments asking, look, we want to provide you with some money, but then we also need to see some involvement, financial involvement from industry also already here. Our experience is that industry is looking at consortia that are trying to develop this and saying, well, we'll wait until the business plan is there and then we'll get involved. So no or hardly any industry support here. The second one is the financing of infrastructure, housing, equipment, ICT infrastructures, other facilities. There's a large bump in the beginning, of course, because you need to invest in a lot of money, in a lot of equipment, which is costly. And then after that, you can also see a renewal, because then the state-of-the-art equipment is old-fashioned and you need to get new equipment again. The money for this, with regard to industry, is very limited. The money for public from public governments is a little bit more, but it's very hard, and that's something I'll later show you. For this, regional money is very often it's important, as well as, of course, the in-kind contribution of partners. Third element is the projects carried out on the infrastructures and making use of the experts involved in the innovation hubs. Here you can see that in the beginning there's a lot of money because you need to build up your project portfolio, so you need some governmental money to co-finance these projects. Later on it will be more and more commercial oriented. We think that in the end there's still governmental money needed to support those projects, especially when you're engaged with SMEs. They cannot pay that much money on the later stages or on these kind of services. Fully paid commercial services, I think, is very hard to achieve. So in the beginning a bump, and later on, of course, the innovation hub will grow until it's finalized. The fourth element is the operational activities. General management, technicians, secretary, staff, kind of people, business development, etc., etc. In the beginning, of course, the website and the hiring of people needs to be organized, etc., etc. So there's a little bump there, but later on it will grow because the innovation hub will grow. The money for this from industry is, or the private sector is very limited. So you need to get this from the revenues. And that's also it's very clear in the Horizon 2020, because there's the indirect cost, which is very limited. Again, it's paying for these kind of services. But you can see, and I'm sure you all see, that these kind of financial needs are very poorly covered, addressed by both private and public funding sources. So now we go to the public side of things, and this is about the public funding principles. What is very important is that you need to get inside the mindset of those governments in order to talk with them to get the funding, which is very much needed to set up the Digital Innovation Hub. The mission of governments is to address grand challenges and to improve the economy, their economy at large. And they want to do what other stakeholders, other private enterprises, etc., 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 cannot do. It is about market failures. They talk about public policymakers talk about market failures. And that's because it's bound by state aid rules, which are very much based on those market failures. And therefore, we also see that many governments focus on the lower TRL to fund and expect the industry to address the higher TRLs. And that's very often because of the valley of death. That's the problem, because the available public funding sources are around TRL 5. It's getting lower enormously, but it hasn't been picked up until TRL 7 by industry partners, because they focus on getting the finance, getting the revenues, and they need to invest in low risk ventures. So that's a problem. But this is very crucial. So these are examples of the market failures. Knowledge spillovers. Knowledge and expertise created will benefit not one company, but a lot of companies. Imperfect, these are the terminologies from the state aid rules. Imperfect information. This sharing information is limited among the ecosystem and will provide some beneficial positions for individualist organizations, and the Digital Innovation Hub can create a level playing field on information. Coordination network failures. You play a role in getting the parties to find each other and to enhance success, societal success, and reduce cost. And the public goods. So training of people is very often a public enterprise. It's not even a European, but a national enterprise, national responsibility. Governments need to educate and train people. That's not up to in industrial partners. Sure, there are some limitations, or there are some other commercial organizations that also address this issue, but that's again very individualized. So it is about, you're not here for a few companies, but you're here for a lot of companies. That's why governments will invest in an innovation hub. And if you then look at the state aid rules, which is law, all 28 member states are bound by those rules. And it's about, there must be a market or system failures. And I'm not going to go into system failures because that can be one webinar as such. But there must be those market failures. There is in the state aid rules a real difference between SMEs, large firms and clusters. So SMEs can get more money than large firms, and clusters can even get more money than SMEs. That's allowed by law. And it's about 50% for SMEs, a little bit more even for clusters, large firms, especially when they get in industrial innovation, it's limited to about 20%, 25%. And a lot of governments even take the lower side on these numbers. Public organizations, and that's why it's important that you create your innovation hub as a public organization, are not bound by those state aid rules. Those state aid rules are because of the private enterprises. But if you look at the public organizations, it is about the staff kind of things. If you offer a service to an individual firm, that funding is still again bound by the state aid rules. So the organization of the hub can be fully paid, but the services that you provide to SMEs cannot be fully paid and are again bound by those state aid rules. And there is also a difference between innovation and economic development. There are state aid rules on economic developments and there are on innovation. And you need to be aware of this, because usually regional enterprises look at economic development, national regional governments look at economic development, and national governments look at innovation. And that's a little bit different. So the state aid rules, so that those are different. This is just an overview of the public funding sources that you can think about. It's not exhaustive, but these are important opportunities that you can go to. Subsidies, it's co-funding, so partially it will be paid by governments, but also you need to bring in your own money. Grants, that's a full payment. It's 100% payment. And with a grant, usually there's no deliverable that you need to comply with. It's just a kind of, you set up a proposal and you get the money, and then of course they want to know what exactly is going on, but it's more of interest than it's, in the end, you're bound to deliver that, because otherwise it will be a contract. And a grant is not a contract. This, by the way, is very often done in US, but it's hardly done in Europe. Taxation, a lot of governments have, member states have taxation on R&D. Loans and loan guarantees. There are some public loans also, but very often they partner up with private enterprises and they get the risky part out to get loan guarantees. Innovation vouchers, programs to that is very much connected to the services, because you can get some vouchers for specific services. Equity, that's taking stock in a specific activity by governments. It's hardly done in Europe, but it's very often done in US. Supporting communication, this is just using the websites, the communication channels of governments to get your information out. Laws and regulation that can stimulate people coming to you to invest in innovation, and institutional support. This is about universities, RTOs, other public institutes that get a basic funding to do innovation, to do R&D. So these are the different funding sources you can think about that are offered by governments. Then I'll go to the different governments here, and I will show you a little bit what the mindsets are of those different governments and why they do what they do and can support you. When not, some examples and some remarks. So regional funding can be done by a regional government, and those are usually very much focused on economic development. It is about creating jobs, creating new SMEs, creating the regional ecosystem. Also what we see is that regional governments, if they've got an institute in their region, it's about the image of the region. And that's very often it's very well regarded. But it is about economic development. And that's what you see at the what not. It's not focused on tier 1 to 4. How do they do that? Sometimes that you can see equity, sometimes loans, project funding, grants, for example, to set up the infrastructure. Those things can be those things are very often funded by regional governments. And you can finance equipment, get support on incubation. Those are the projects. Get support on organizing conferences. We also have seen some regional governments just giving housing to an innovation hub to set up their business. So again, remarks focused on economic development and then on innovation, but it's the focus is on economic development. They're very much involved in the initiation, but they're less involved later on. And well, the housing is an issue. It's also connected to educational programs very often. This is because the educational institutes are regional entities. So the connection to those education programs are good, and you can use them to get the funding for your service on education, training, skills, etc., etc. They are crucial to get ERDF money. So you need to get in contact with the regions to get connection to that ERDF, which is a very important funding mechanism to support your innovation hub. National funding agencies are much more focused on creating a well-established innovation ecosystem on a national level. They like to link universities to industry. They provide basic research funding, project funding, which are much more focused on tier 1 to, let's say, 5. What they do not do or hardly do is focus on tier 6 to 9. So that's important. So it's complementary to the region, and they can find each other a little bit on the tier 5 to 7. And connecting those two can be very interesting. Institutional support. Funding, for example, funding a university or an RTO, project co-financing programs, vouchers, the innovation vouchers are very interesting for national funding, national governments to develop, and of course the R&D taxation. So here it's much more on innovation and much less on economic development. You need to get the connection to the industry. If you can create the connection to the industry, they're very willing to talk with you to get funding. And you need to use that market failure terminology. the jargon that I just offered is very crucial to discuss with them. We can see a lot of people talking from an innovation hub to a national government telling, look, this is good for a company. Yeah, sure, but where's the market failure? It's not about establishing new business, because if you create new business for a single company, yeah, the company should pay for it. There's no market failure. You need to make sure that that market failure is the message is comes across to the National Funding Agency. Then you can get access to the funding. And you can also use the Horizon 2020 opportunities and a connection to the Juncker plan. National funding, again, more and more look at the Juncker plan as perhaps a good mechanism to support innovation hubs. But it's very limited what you can do there. I'll later on talk a little bit about that in more detail. Then the European funding, it's Horizon 2020, ERDF, COSME, whatever, Interreg, all those funding opportunities. This is about creating the pan-European cooperation, boosting the economy as well as addressing the grand challenges. They see that innovation is crucial for that boosting of the economy and addressing the grand challenges. And it is about excellence, and it is about strengthening the weaker regions. So these two elements are there. Excellence, Horizon 2020, ERDF, strengthening the weaker regions. But the pan-European cooperation is crucial there. So if you have a small project and it's a national initiative, it's out of scope. So you need to create the pan-European cooperation. The education is a little bit touched by Europe now, but it's a national initiative, and even it's a national responsibility, and even made operational on a regional level. So that's why it's between brackets. The long-term funding, what the European Commission wants is they want to boost some activity, and they want to create a kind of a momentum, but they don't see long-term funding for those initiatives. You need to establish that with the regions, with the national governments, and with industry partners, of course. And also it's very hard to support technological infrastructures. Some opportunities on the ERDF, but it's very limited. So the examples, you know, innovation actions, CSAs, transnational cooperation, governments, and national loans through the European investment banks. That's the one. So it's very formalized. It's sometimes it's very difficult to get access to that money. More than one country required, and use the ERDF and the Horizon 2020 as an initiator. And what is important, but that's linking to what I said about the regions, it is about the connection with the regional entities to make use of the ERDF. So now the private funding sources. Mission, make money. Low risks, high profits. It's focusing on the TRL 729. And it's not about R&D very often, it's about business creation. And I can tell you, within our experience, it's of limited relevance to the hubs, the direct hubs, but it's very relevant for its customers, which will be discussed by Monique later on. So possible funding sources there: private equity, venture capital, loans from private banks, industrial partnerships, membership, sponsorships, contract research, etc., etc. I'll go into those a little bit further. So private equity, again, it is about just making money. So what they do is they provide funding, but they want to get a part of your business. So that's hardly done within in an innovation house. And they are not talking about high-risk projects. and complex projects, they want return on investment in the short term. They just want it in a few years. They want to have the revenues. And how you could do this is that you can connect to these venture capitalists by offering access to your customers, because your customers are much more suitable to get in contact with those venture capitalists. But if you join up with a venture capitalist, you can allow those venture capitalists to support your customers. And if you have that service, it's the access to finance service, then your customers will come to you, because it's clear that they can benefit from your services because you've got a direct contact with the venture capitalist. So that's a very good mechanism to make use of that venture capital, because you get more customers. The technological expertise within VCs is limited, and that's also an opportunity, because especially from the technological perspective, but also even from the business perspective, an innovation hub should have a lot more to say than a venture capitalist, and they can help venture capitalists. And it's of limited use to the hub, and you need to create the indirect mechanisms. So talk with venture capitalists, get them in as a kind of a partner to have direct access and to have to their finance, and to help make the connection to your customers. That's very beneficial. Loans, yeah, this is something which is very difficult. Of course, private banks are also in to make money. There's some that have an institutional role to create economic growth. But the problem is that a loan does not influence this decision making to get a digital innovation or an innovation hub going. It is when you made a decision that it's beneficial in the long term, the balance between cost and income is positive with the filling of the gap, but you need to start up, then that startup cash flow problem can be addressed by a loan. It is about lending capital based on collateral or a very sound business plan that you can show that you're going to make money. And that making money is only there if you do a lot of testing and validation, because that's something where you can get contracts with industry that, for example, to evaluate and certify a car and test a car. Well, you can have a kind of an infrastructure there, but you can also then go to a car manufacturing that you have a 10-year contract with them, that they take your services for a longer term. That's been seen quite a bit. These private banks do not take on risks. They do no funding of risks. They want to be sure. So risk is a problem there. And some examples: loans for housing, equipment as collateral, although very often the equipment an innovation hub has is very outdated in a few years, and then the collateral equipment cannot be used as collateral. So combination with governments to have loan guarantees is an option. ASIF can be an option. Create a fund of funds that you can discuss with your national governments. Overall business plan, etc., etc. Well, I think I've discussed this all. So loans are not important for you, but much more important for your customers. But there's the indirect mechanism again. Industrial partnerships. Well, what we see is that a lot of firms do want to have a kind of a partnership, because they can hook into further development of innovative, inspiring avenues of innovation. But they can also have a kind of an environment where they can test their beta test their equipment. That's interesting for you, because then you've got state-of-the-art equipment, you get them for nothing, and that's financing some of the things that you need to get financed. And industries just, especially the large one, they just reduce costs, because then they don't have to buy their large equipment to do pilot production, and they can share it among different partners. It is about equity sometimes, it's about expert participation, pilot equipment, commercial fees. So what's not, you won't get funding for external projects or loans. I think that's very hard to get that. Examples are advices to projects. They could be very interesting to advise some new business development. And the larger companies, a kind of a mentoring ships to the SMEs you provide your services to can be arranged. We see a lot of researchers on location from industry. We see testing equipment, what I said, the beta testing, joint projects, renting equipment, small series production. There always must be a win-win situation. They do not do it for a mission. They don't do a mission-oriented partnerships. They're in it for themselves. And it is, of course, interesting to create partnerships with equipment. And larger firms have much more responsibility opportunities, because they do not have one project, which is much more contract-based, contract research and innovation-based project, but they can create a portfolio of different projects where a longer-term participation can be interesting for them. This goes directly also to the memberships. We see a lot of memberships coming. This is about connecting to the state-of-the-art R&D and I activity. It's about the structural funding to get them involved. So it's memberships for 5 years. They also want something in return. So it is about collaborative research, contract research, but also they buy into participation in networks, newsletters, and also buy into the economic or the ecosystem, so the regional or national ecosystem. Larger companies we see connected at midterm, the SMEs more short-term and contract research oriented. And potential participation is midterm partnerships with tier 1, short-term more individual, and just an overall getting access to the network and information at tier 3. And you can see that there's midterm is much more expensive for a member than short-term, and the access of the network, the tier 3. And here, this membership is also important because you get the involvement from industry, and that allows you to get public funding also. So that's a good mechanism to get public finance. Then the partner investments, this is about creating access to the markets. That's why the partners are in, but they also the partnerships in RDI as well as the societal mission. As TNO, we want to get involved in those innovation hubs because it's our mission. So that's where we see an innovation partnership there. Very often technology, business and management experts are in, but also technological infrastructures. We don't pay a lot of financial capital, and we do not do a lot of consultancy and capital for SMEs. But what we do is offering information, offering location, housing, IT infrastructure and equipment, etc., etc. So for us as TNO to be partner in, for example, in those innovation hubs, and I think with a lot of partners it's more or less the same, the lower TRL is a very important one, and the expertise, so the competence center oriented issues. And we do want to see a kind of a diminishing in-kind contribution after a few years. And it's of course making business with business. So we want to combine activities. And that's what partners in general see. So some conclusions. I come to the end to my presentation. If you look again at those services, in this slide you can see what kind of funding you can expect from public and private enterprises. Community building, it's a little bit difficult to get funding. It's especially Horizon 2020 national region on networking, and of course the private's brokerage fees, etc. in the memberships. Research and development, again, Horizon 2020 national, and it's focused on SMEs, and where the private enterprises, contract research, large firms, IPR can be a little bit benefit, and of course again the memberships. Skills in education is a little bit more regional, and you can get some funding from the ones that you train, but don't get your hopes up. This is limited. Incubator support, again regional, national, and you can have a kind of a co-funding from SMEs then, etc., etc. I think this shows quite clearly what you can expect from the different public and private fundings, and how you can deal with that. Now I come back to the evolutionary element. So in the preparation phase, it's a limited amount of money, and it's a lot of in-kind partner contributions, and sometimes regional and EU governments can support you a little bit with some money for that, but it's very limited. The initiation is about getting the infrastructure ready and getting the partner contributions really up to speed, etc., etc. This is about getting to a stage where there's a critical mass. And then, of course, the stabilization, it's you getting a project portfolio. The memberships will increase, will get you more and more money. Partner contributions will be reduced during this stage, and you'll get more business developments and some more staff, but it's also connected to getting more projects. And of course, there will be a stage of renewal. This is buying new equipment. There, the partnerships with industry can be interesting, but you also need to get refocusing on markets, and you need to get new personnel on board, and that requires quite a bit of money. So this goes to, it's a very rough figure. This public funding in the beginning is very important. It'll go down to, let's say, 30% in the end. Private funding will increase up to about 70%. It's my belief, my personal belief, that it cannot be done, that in the end it's going to be fully private funding and no public funding is there. I can see, we have experience with the most important innovation hubs in Europe, and there you can see that public funding is still around. They still have a very crucial, it's limited, but they have a crucial role in getting the private organizations in and the private funding in. So this is my last slide. It's patchwork. So you need to create the combination of funding from the beginning. And it's connecting the different business models to each other. It's creating, and that's this bullet here, it's it's the creation of the business funnel, and there you also it's very important that you give emphasis, that you emphasize the community building. That's crucial to create the funnel, and the funnel is attached to the patchwork again. Of course, this is all very high over, because every single country in EU 27 or 28 has a specific situation, and what I just told you will differ from one side to another side. And again, long-term viability requires long-term public funding. So that's my presentation, and I will now go to part 2 of the customer side. So Monique, can you take over?
You need to make Monique the presenter.
Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me?
Now it's okay. Now it's okay already. No. Because she wants to.
Okay. You have to unmute me.
Yeah, you're unmuted. So Monique, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can Monique move the slides?
Monique?
Yeah. Well, I would like to talk you. Sorry?
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, well, there's an echo, but okay, I'll try to talk through it. The objective of my part of the presentation is that you understand the difficulties for the customers of the Innovation Hub with funding their activities. So I would like to start with understanding the needs of the customers and the company life cycle and their financial needs. I think I'm going to skip the second part, possible funding sources, because Maurits has already told a lot about that. So I would like you to skip some sheets later, tell you, Maurits. And the last part is about understanding the needs and potential services digital innovation hubs can provide to the different customers. So you can look at startups, at SMEs and corporates. They have different needs and they need different services from you. And it is important that you understand them, how you could support them, and also how to fund these activities in your hub. Understanding your customers. To be able to sell your services as a hub customers, you need to really understand them. For a company, your customer, you need to be very clear which services you are going to offer. He wants to know, what do I get? What is the service? What does it cost? How fast can I get it? And how much money can I earn with it? He is also allergic to if it's too much hassle. So if you think maybe, oh, it's nice, it's easy to get money. If he has to do a lot for it, it is a hassle, then he is not interested. He is too occupied with doing business and not interested in arranging small amounts of money if it's too much hassle. And last but not least, you need to understand and speak the same language. So it's conditional that you as a hub are locally available, they can trust you, and you are accessible for a company. What's important for you to understand the business and what a company is looking for, it's important that you understand the company life cycle or the evolution a company is going through. The company is going through different stages, and it starts with the startup phase. It's about research, proof of concept, establishing IPR, and preparation and starting up the company. Then it's going to the setup phase of the company, and it's about proof of product and market introduction. So the first part is about business creation and the venture phase. Then the proof of market, IPR, management team is important, manufacturing, licensing and sales, that's the early growth phase. And of course, in the end, the sustained growth and maturity phase, what's about expansion. And that's about the establishing the business part. The financial needs of a company, you see in blue the costs and in red the revenues. The costs will be high in the beginning as money is needed for prototyping, pilot production and market introduction. And only from early stage on, a bit from seed stage on, the company will start to get some revenues. This means that the net cash pool position, the black line, is negative for a long time. And especially in the seed early stage phase, it's very negative as a lot of money is still needed for prototyping and scaling up. And it's still not guaranteed that you will get a lot of revenue. So that's what they call the value of death value of this, especially for high-tech companies, as the estimated profit risk is still very high. This is a very difficult stage for funding these companies. I will come back on that later. Well, possibilities in funding. It's important to understand the funding sources, as each funding source has its own rules. But Maurits has already told you a lot about that. Now, donation sponsors is free money, but the other categories are grants and subsidies, debt and equity. Sometimes if you have to repay part, well, maybe I think it's better to go further indeed, because Maurits already has told you a lot about this. Very quickly about the advantages of grants and subsidies. It's of course easy money, and but it's complex for subsidies and a complex process, and they need really help with finding co-financing for it. So recommendations for your companies, if they want to make use of subsidies, is that they apply before starting the project and that they work together with partners, because that then they have a higher success rate, and really help them or ask subsidiary consultants to help them with the complex process. Well, other possibilities in funding are of course debt. You can think about loans, bank debt, leasing, bonds and suppliers. I don't want to spend too much time on this one. What is important is that also your customer understands how banks are looking at companies. So banks do not like and understand high-tech innovation projects. They focus on securities and maximizing collateral. So, and they only are interested if you can meet your interest payments and paying off on time. And the bank is trying to keep its risk as low as possible. So most of the time banks are especially in the beginning, in the startup phase, it's not a possibility. Next slide, please. Yeah, equity. Here are some important rules for selecting, how to select a venture capitalist for your customer. They look at the financing stage, the sector preference. You should look at their geographical focus, the amount of investment, the track record of the VC team. But what my experience is as a business developer is that a lot of companies, especially startups, they have no clue how to select this. So what you could do as a hub is really help them with this process, and at least help them to understand how venture capitalists work and how they should look at it. They also should understand, your companies, if they are looking for funding, how they are judged by a venture capitalist. So what are they looking at? They think it's important to look at your management skills and the track record, the novelty of the idea, and they look at if the technology is disruptive, and they are looking at market and growth potential. Of course, the quality of the business plan is always important, but that's for every funding instrument. And they look at your financial attractiveness, and your cash flow. So what is important for your customers which are looking for funding is that they understand the differences between how banks are selecting to finance you and how VCs are selecting companies. VCs see companies with a unique degree of risk, with a high expected return, and what counts is the potential return on investment in your business. And banks look more like the credit history, and as I told you before, they don't like risk at all. What is important for the companies to understand that it's not only about technology, it should be market driven. for venture capitalists, cash is king, so they have to show that in their business plan. What is the scalability and the market and growth potential? Life cycle funding. I explained to you the company life cycle in the beginning, through which stages a company is going. As we have seen in the picture, of financial needs costs are very high in the startup phase, where there is no guarantee that there is a return on investment. So the first part, no private funding instruments are going to invest in you as a company. So the only ones who are prepared to give you money are friends, families, and fools in the beginning. And you really need public money in like pre-seed funds or seed funding, which can help you through these phases. Only from the early stage on, you can ask for, if you can go to private funding possibilities like informal investors and venture funds, because then you are starting to have your first revenue and your first proof of market interest, and there is a bit more well, it's a bit more certain if it's proven in the market that there is interest and you will get revenues in the future. Then I would like you to show line A is an average startup. You see that goes very directly in line, and you can just need some of the instruments which will build up in time. But if you look at a fast-growing startup, much more money is needed, and you already have even to from the beginning you need more money, and especially in the pre-seed seed phase you have to combine funds to get enough money to get them through these phases. I still miss one in the beginning. I think it's coming now. You have to click one time more, because I miss the subsidies and grants, because that's also an important funding source in the beginning. And line C, that's what's important, because especially for tech startups with high R&D expenditure, which is more than be provided by the separate funding sources, you really need financial engineering and to help them, especially in the beginning, to make a combination or a patchwork, as Marit said, of funding possibilities. So you need to be aware of that for your customers, but also to help them or to educate them how this looks like and what's going to happen in the future and what that means for funding their business. Here you see an example of regional and national funding instruments, which are very important. And as Maurits already said, the possibilities differ per country. So what helps as a digital innovation hub, what you could do is help them to give them an overview of funding instruments which are available as well in the private sector as on a European level, but especially at national and regional level. You could make the difference and help them, or even set up programs or pre-seed funds to help them through these phases. So far, we understand funding sources in relation to the company life cycle, and as I said, each funding source has its own rules, and it's important to understand that. With this part of the presentation, we try to create insights in the mindset of possible customers and their opportunities to pay for services and to be involved in a hub. So you have different kind of customers, startups, SMEs, and corporates. And in this part, I will show you some example of services a hub can provide to support clients with funding their activities. Maurits already explained to you and showed you the objective and possible service of the customers and also how you could fund them. I would like to to show you the possibilities and the differences between well, the different kind of customers you have. And in relation to the life cycle of a company, it is important that you understand the needs and which services you can offer as a hub to your different customers. Startups and SMEs need other services than large companies. In general, they all need network and expertise. However, how to treat them and where to focus on for which services they are prepared to pay for, that's really very different. As you can see from here, the startups you could support, they really need mentoring and support and access to finance. As the SMEs, which are a bit later in the cycle, they are more interested in testing and validation project, an accelerator program. But this is all one-to-one, and the large companies are more interested in collaborative R&D and are prepared to pay for that by memberships. I'm going on and more into detail to that on the next sheet. So here you see the services for startups. Well, network and brokerage, they really need that. They also have legal expertise, so that could really be services you could provide. And an incubator program, and we already said support to access to finance and mentoring, especially support in business development. That is what they really need, because they really have no clue how to do that. A lot of them don't have that. But if you ask the startups if they are prepared to pay for it, well, not for these kind of services. Maybe for testing and validation for a project, but then they need money and the startup doesn't have any money. So startups do not have money, so even if they would prepare to pay for your services, they just don't have it. So you have to pay attention to, and besides that, you have to pay attention to the fact that startups are often a bit stubborn and have to be convinced on the advantages of using your services. Yeah, I already said this. Well, examples of how to support startups with funding is how could you fund these kind of services for startups. This is what Maurits already said. You should try to set up programs or projects to accelerate the regional startup ecosystem. And you have the funding source for these kind of activities are public funding, regional or national funding. So that yeah, you could then, because of the imperfections in the market or to develop the ecosystem economically, these are programs you could provide. An example, what we have here in Brainpod region is Brightmove. It's a fund for pre-seed loans and proof of concept loans, 100,000 and 250,000 euros. That's kind of a program that's really supporting innovative startups. They help with scouting, supporting in building a financial viable business plan, and also including the financing itself. And of course they help with network linking to launching customer and guiding them with business developers and patent experts. Other examples you could help with, or programs you could set up as a hub, is, for example, vouchers for innovation or vouchers for business plans. A certain amount of money which they could spend and which could help them to develop their business. If you look at the customers at the SMEs, which are a bit further in the company life cycle, they also need, of course, network and expertise, but they have money, of course, to pay for projects and especially for testing and validation of their business, of their research, and you could also help them with, for example, an accelerator program. So if you see, are they prepared to pay for it? No, not for all of it. And it should be very clear what's the added value for them. But SMEs are prepared to pay for the services, and they are convinced that the Digital Innovation Hub support is worth the money, and it can help them to make some possible cost savings. But what is important for SMEs to understand, pay attention to the fact that SMEs need to have a long-term view. SME boards who lack long-term vision, they may be reluctant to invest because on the short term, they don't see the value. And it's important that they understand the potential for new business and the advantage of future-proofing their enterprises. And this is something I think as a hub you could help them in. An example of a service for a digital innovation hub to support SMEs, for example, is an innovation voucher or a business plan voucher. So you see, as a hub, you could do something with public funding to make a program to support, to finance your innovation vouchers or your business plan vouchers. Yeah? You could set up programs to accelerate the regional business ecosystem, and for some of them you can just ask money. Especially for special projects, the SMEs are prepared to pay for it. If you look at the large companies, well, Maurits already told you a lot about that. Here are some examples you could ask, you could provide them with. They're all interested in community building, in skills and education, and they are prepared to pay by membership. And of course, they are very interested in collaborative R&D, which means that they, I missed something, that corporates or large companies are interested in shared R&D because that is really a cost reduction for them. So they are very interested in this, and they are capable of running demonstration projects, and they are used to collaborating with others and have funding available. So pay attention to the fact that corporates or large companies can help you as a hub with public funding for large projects or programs in doing collaborative R&D and setting up clusters. So I hope with this presentation we created some insights in the mindset of possible customers, and we hope that you've got a pragmatic and realistic view on what you can expect from your customers with relation to funding and service. So, any questions?
Hi, I'm Luigi Nucci from Lazio. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So in the first part of the presentation, you made a distinction between the public innovation hub and private innovation hub. I would like to know which is your vision of we as innovation hubs in the I4MS project. Do you think we are more in the public, in the private, a sort of mix?
I would see it depends a lot on the focus what you are doing and the opportunities you get. Sometimes when you've got some large partners, large industrial partners, corporates, you could create a kind of a private innovation hub. But for example, in Lazio and your innovation hubs there, I would see that it's much more a public innovation hub. You already got a kind of an ecosystem orientation very much in your work. And I would say that it's much more a public innovation hub than it is a private innovation hub. But I cannot look into your minds, and I see the opportunities in several cases for private ones as well as public ones. So
Okay.
I'm sorry, I cannot answer directly the question, one of the two.
Okay, the answer is look at yourself and position yourself relation with the situation in your region.
Exactly.
Right?
This is very much EU 27 or 28 is large, and there's such a heterogeneous field that I cannot over that EU 28 say this is it. It's very regionally determined.
Just one more question. In any case, whether we feel more public or private, we should sell services to companies to make in the long term to have the finance apart from public or private funding or from partners. But whether or not we are public or private, we have to sell services to pay our hub to raise money for our hub, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think the overview of the potential services is given in the presentation is an important one that you could look like. What I would like to emphasize is the multi-business model approach. So what is important with the Digital Innovation Hub is to get as much out of the investment as possible. And usually it's the strategy is, well, we should focus on one specific part and that we can do this very good. I think with an innovation hub, especially on the midterm, you should strive for a multi-business model. The renting of your equipment, for example, to large enterprises will provide you with a lot of money to get into the innovation hub. And you need that money. So if you should organize that also, because it's a revenue stream, and you need to get your equipment and your people occupied 100%. Well, that's impossible, but it should be your objective to make it, to maximize that, and therefore you need the multi-model. There was a question about market failures. I think I've included one of the slides. I really understand that this is so much information. So I would also suggest that that you later on you get the presentation, and you later on you can ask me questions if needed. The market failure is addressed in one of the slides. It is about the perspective of the public authorities, governments, how they see that the added value of the innovation hubs with regard to the societal mission is, and what kind of jargon is used there. And one of the slides, which is named Market Failures, addresses that. Could you provide us with a financial model, or should we build the model ourselves? We've got in the previous previous webinar, we sent around an overview, an Excel sheet for the full investment plan. So we will resend that, but that's sent based on the business plan development already. So are there other questions? If there are no other questions, yeah.
Sorry, I have a question, general question about. I will ask on behalf of all, because almost all Italian digital innovation apps not appear on the map of I4MS website, please.
That can, I'll take that on. I'll take that on. But there's now under development a new map. So I think that's not done yet. But also it is an old I4MS website which more or less includes the competence centers, the old competence centers. And we are developing, but that's another project to be honest, we are developing a new map of digital innovation hubs. And you can be included if you, I think you're included already. So.
Okay, thank you very much.
Presentation will be provided on the Dropbox, right?
We'll send around the presentation and include it. But it's going to be available also on the website.
Okay, on the website. Yeah. All right, fine. Thank you.
I'm sure after looking at the presentation, you've got more questions because it's a very intensive presentation, I think. So I would like to finish the webinar and ask you if you've got more questions to send it, and we'll try to answer them. Yeah? So, thank you very much for your participation, and hopefully it was interesting and helpful, and good luck further on with the development of your innovation hubs. Bye-bye.
Bye.